James, son of Zebedee, was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus, and traditionally considered the first apostle to be martyred. He was a son of Zebedee and Salome, and brother of John the Apostle. He is also called James the Greater or James the Great to distinguish him from James, son of Alphaeus. James the Greater is the patron saint of Spain. In the New Testament, the son of Zebedee and Salome, James is styled the Greater to distinguish him from the apostle James the Less, who was probably shorter of stature. We know nothing of Saint James's early life. He was the brother of John, the beloved disciple, and probably the elder of the two. His parents seem to have been people of means. Zebedee was a fisherman of the Sea of Galilee, who probably lived in or near Bethsaida, perhaps in Capharnaum, and had some boatmen or hired men. Salome was one of the pious women who afterwards followed Christ and ministered unto him of their substance. And his brother John was personally known to the high priest, and must have had wherewithal to provide for the mother of Jesus. It is probable that his brother had not received the technical training of the rabbinical schools. In this sense they were unlearned and without any official position among the Jews. But, according to the social rank of their parents, they must have been men of ordinary education, in the common walks of Jewish life. They had frequent opportunity of coming in contact with Greek life and language, which were already widely spread along the shores of the Galilean Sea. James is described as one of the first disciples to join Jesus. The Synoptic Gospels state that James and John were with their father by the seashore when Jesus called them to follow him. Matt 4:21-22, Mk 1:19-20, James was one of only 3 apostles whom Jesus selected to bear witness to his transfiguration. James and his brother wanted to call down fire on a Samaritan town, but were rebuked by Jesus. Lk 9:51-6, the Acts of the Apostles records that Herod the king had James executed by sword. He is the only apostle whose martyrdom is recorded in the New Testament. He is, thus, traditionally believed to be the first of the 12 apostles martyred for his faith. Acts 12:1-2, Nixon suggests that this may have been caused by James' fiery temper, for which he and his brother earned the nickname Boanerges or Sons of Thunder. Mark 3:17, F. Bruce contrasts this story to that of the liberation of St. Peter, and notes that James should die while Peter should escape is a mystery of divine providence. Veneration. St. James is the patron saint of Spain and, according to legend, his remains are held in Santiago de Compostela in Galicia. The traditional pilgrimage to the grave of the saint, known as the Way of St. James, has been the most popular pilgrimage for Western European Catholics from the early Middle Ages onwards. 125,141 pilgrims registered in 2008 as having completed the final 100 km walk to Santiago to qualify for a Compostela. When July 25 falls on a Sunday, it is a Eurocubed Jubilee Eurocubed year, and a special East door is opened for entrance into the Santiago Cathedral. Jubilee years fall every 5, 6, and 11 years. In the 2004 Jubilee year, 179,944 pilgrims received a Compostela. The feast day of St. James is celebrated on July 25 on the liturgical calendars of the Roman Catholic, Anglican, Lutheran and certain Protestant churches. He is commemorated on April 30 in the Orthodox Christian liturgical calendar. Spain. According to ancient local tradition, on January 2 AD 40, the Virgin Mary appeared to James on the bank of the Bro River at Caesar Augusta, while he was preaching the Gospel in Iberia. She appeared upon a pillar, Nustra C ± Oradal pillar, and that pillar is conserved and venerated within the present Basilica of Our Lady of the Pillar, in Zaragoza, Spain. Following that apparition, St. James returned to Judea, where he was beheaded by King Herod Agrippa I in the year 44. The 12th century Historia Compostelana commissioned by Bishop Diego Jalmarez provides a summary of the legend of St. James as it was believed at Compostela. 2 propositions are central to it: first, that St. James preached the Gospel in Iberia as well as in the Holy Land. Second, that after his martyrdom at the hands of Herod Agrippa his disciples carried his body by sea to Iberia, where they landed at Padre Cubden on the coast of Galicia, and took it inland for burial at Santiago de Compostela. The translation of his relics from Judea to Galicia in the northwest of Iberia was effected, in legend, by a series of miraculous happenings. Decapitated in Jerusalem with a sword by Herod Agrippa himself, his body was taken up by angels, and sailed in a rudderless, unattended boat to Iria Flavia in Iberia, where a massive rock closed around his relics, which were later removed to Compostela. An even later tradition states that he miraculously appeared to fight for the Christian army during the Battle of Clavijo, and was henceforth called Matamoros. Santiago y Sierra Spa plus or minus a has been the traditional battle cry of Spanish armies. St. James the Muirslayer, one of the most valiant saints and knights the world ever had, has been given by God to Spain for its patron and protection. A Euro Cervantes, Don Quixote. A similar miracle is related about San Milan. The possibility that a cult of James was instituted to supplant the Galician cult of Priscillian, who was widely venerated across the north of Iberia as a martyr at the hands of the bishops rather than as a heretic, should not be overlooked. This was cautiously raised by Henry Chadwick in his book on Priscillian. It is not the traditional Roman Catholic view. The Catholic Encyclopedia of 1908, however, states, although the tradition that James founded an apostolic see in Iberia was current in the year 700, no certain mention of such tradition is to be found in the genuine writings of early writers nor in the early councils. The first certain mention we find in the 9th century, in Nutka, a monk of St. Alfred Strabo, and others. The tradition was not unanimously admitted afterwards, while numerous modern scholars, following Louis Dutchson and T. E. Kendrick, reject it. The Bollandists however defended it. The suggestion began to be made from the 9th century that, as well as evangelizing in Iberia, his body may have been brought to Compostela. No earlier tradition places the burial of St. James in Hispania. A rival tradition places the relics of the apostle in the Church of Saint Saturnin at Toulouse. If any physical relics were ever involved, they might plausibly have been divided between the two. The authenticity of the relics at Compostela was asserted in the bull of Pope Leo XIII, Omnipotens Deus, of November 1, 1884. The Catholic Encyclopedia registered several difficulties, or bases for doubts of this tradition. Beyond the late appearance of the legend, James suffered martyrdom, Acts 12:1-2, in AD 44. According to the tradition of the early Church, he had not yet left Jerusalem at this time. St. Paul, however, in his epistle to the Romans written after AD 44, expressed his intention to avoid building on someone else's foundation, Rom 15:20, by visiting Spain, Rom 15:23, 15:24, suggesting that he knew of previous evangelization in Hispania. The tradition at Compostela placed the discovery of the relics of the saint in the time of King Alfonso II and of Bishop Theodomir of Iria. These traditions were the basis for the pilgrimage route that began to be established in the 9th century, and the shrine dedicated to James at Santiago de Compostela, in Galicia and Spain, became the most famous pilgrimage site in the Christian world. The Way of St. James is a tree of routes that cross Western Europe and arrive at Santiago through northern Spain. Eventually James became the patron saint of Spain. The English name James comes from Italian Giacomo, a variant of Giacobo derived from Ἰάκωβος in Latin, itself from the Greek ¼ II per mil I squared II. In French, Jacob is translated Jacques. In eastern Spain, Jacobus became Jacum, or Jaime. In Catalonia, it became Jaume. In western Iberia it became Iago, from Hebrew unregistered trademark O² MHz to the first, which when prefixed with Sant became Santiago in Portugal and Galicia. Tiago is also spelled Diego, which is also the Spanish name of Saint Didacus of Alcala. James' emblem was the scallop shell, and pilgrims to his shrine often wore that symbol on their hats or clothes. The French for a scallop is coquille Saint-Jacques, which means cockle of St. James. The German word for a scallop is Jakobsmuskel, which means muscle of St. James. The Dutch word is Jacobsschalp, meaning shell of St. James. The military order of Santiago, named after James, was founded in Spain in the 12th century to fight the Moors. Later, As in other orders of chivalry, the membership became a mark of honor. Congo. James had a special place in the Central African Kingdom of Congo because of his association with the founding of Christianity in the country in the late 15th century. Portuguese sailors and diplomats brought the saint to Congo when they first reached the country in 1483. When King Afonso I of Congo, whose Congo name was Mvembanzinga, the second Christian king, was facing a rival, his brother Mpanzu Kittima, in battle, he reported that a vision of St. James and the heavenly host appeared in the sky, frightened Mpanzu Kittima's soldiers, and gave Afonso the victory. As a result, he declared that St. James' feast day be celebrated as a national holiday. Over the years, St. James' Day became the central holiday of Congo. Taxes were collected on that day, and men eligible for military duty were required to appear armed. There were usually regional celebrations as well as one at the capital. In some cases, Congolese slaves carried the celebration to the New World, and there are still celebrations of St. James' Day in Haiti and Puerto Rico. Latter-day Saints. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches that James has been resurrected and that in 1829 he along with the resurrected Peter and the translated John visited Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery and restored the priesthood authority with apostolic succession to earth. See also, St. Peter of Rates, Way of St. James, Cathedral of St. James Street James Church, references. External links, St. James the Great, Apostle, Butler's Lives of the Saints, The Life, Miracles and Martyrdom of St. James the Great, Apostle and Martyr of the Christian Church, The Way of St. James Guide for the Pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela following St. James's footsteps. R. A. Fletcher, St. James's Catapult, The Life and Times of Diego Gelmarez of Santiago de Compostela, Oxford University Press, 1984, Chapter 3, The Early History of the Cult of St. James. Apostle James the brother of St. John the theologian, Orthodox icon and Synaxarian, History St. James the Greater, Apostle at the Christian Iconography website, St. James the Greater from Caxton's translation of the Golden Legend.